Bradford seconds. Any objection? So moved. All right, number 7, Mr. Garvey.
Yes. Number 7, on motion of Mr. Romer, seconded by Mr. Garvey, the State Authorized School Oversight Committee recommends that the board approve the following process for automatic renewal of charters for the 2010-2011 charter renewal cycle.
You don't need to read the rest
Mrs.
of it.
Johnson,
Hoping I don't need to read.
Mrs. Johnson, you had
Yes,
I
please
asked-
refer to your packet.
I had this item pulled mainly to ask the question, before any automatic renewal, if there's a material amendment, does it come back to the board? Okay, that's all I
Yes,
need
ma'am.
to know. Thank you. Then I will change from having been a no to a yes.
all right, Mr. Garvey, would you make that motion to approve number 7?
Yes, on behalf of the State Authorized School Oversight Committee, I move approval of item number 7.
And a second. Ms.
Second.
Johnson seconds. Any objection?
Yeah, I'm going to object,
Mrs. Givens?
and I'd like to
Okay.
say why. I think that on the second and third and fourth categories, 5 and 10 years may be too long. I think that
The law gives it that.
the charter should be renewed and reviewed, and that a 10-year period is absolutely too long.
That's so noted. All right, I think that's, we're
No, it
down to
doesn't.
number
No,
8.
sir.
No,
Mr.
it
Geis.
doesn't.
Number 8.
Number 8, on motion of Ms. Bradford, seconded by Mr. Bennett, the State Authorized School Oversight Committee recommends that the board receive the report on the eligibility of Type 2 charter school proposals for Orleans Parish. We have a card that has been submitted by Mr. Ed Morris, who is the attorney for the Orleans Parish School Board. He would like to speak to this item.
I'd like to ask a question.
Mrs. Givens?
For my peace of mind, what does it mean that you received the report on the eligibility of Type 2 charter schools?
If I remember correctly, the Orleans Parish School Board gave us a handout regarding their position on this item, and I think that's what we're speaking
I
of.
understand that, but that's not my question, Mr. Geis. I asked, what does this mean? You just received a report that talked about which schools would be eligible to be Type 2s?
That was not the report.
No,
Well,
no.
what was the report? That's what I'm asking.
It concerned Orleans Parish's risk factors and whether they were academically challenged or whatever the terms are now.
So
It was
this,
it actually presented their position on the matter.
that's what this
That's what this was.
motion, it doesn't read that way to me.
That's what this was, as I remember. Mr.
So
Mark?
is the eligibility of Orleans Parish School Board to review
That's right.
type, that's not what this says.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
but,
So perhaps we need to reword number 8.
okay.
Good morning, Chairman Geis, members of the Bessie Board. My name is Ed Morris. I'm General Counsel for the Orleans Parish School Board. And with me this morning, I have a face that's familiar to all of you all, Superintendent Darrell Kilbert. I guess we need to add Bishop to his title, too. I didn't know that he was a preacher with the invocation this morning. Having said that, we simply come before you this morning out of an abundance of caution. I was directed by the board president and vice president to come back before you. If you all recall, I was before the State Authorized School Oversight Committee this past Tuesday at 10 a.m. With regards to the issue concerning bypassing the Orleans Parish School Board in the Type 2 charter application process. And at that time, there was some confusion, and I'm sure that I led to some of the confusion in terms of what the Orleans Parish School Board wanted to do with respect to the current Type 2 applications that are before the Bessie. And what I said at that time was that the previous couple of years, what Orleans Parish School Board has done by way of participation is to review the Type 2 applications and to make comment and or recommendations with respect to those Type 2 applications. In the past, it was 1 or 2 or possibly 3 Type 2 applications. As I understand it now, there are some 9 applications 9 or more applications that are before Bessie requesting Type 2 charter schools from applicants in Orleans Parish. I didn't know that the number was quite that large. My board then directed me to come back and to address the matter again and say that the Orleans Parish School Board, what we are asking now is that the process with respect to those Type 2 applications from Orleans Parish, that process be abandoned, and that the Bessie would comply with the dictates of revised statute 17:39, 83, subpart A2. And basically what that sets forth is that the law sets forth that before the Bessie will evaluate a Type 2 application, that the applicant goes to the local school board first, seeking either a Type 1 or a Type 3 charter school. That upon the denial of that Type 1 or Type 3 application, then the applicant either denial of it outright or unduly delayed review and evaluation by the local school board, then and only then does the applicant take their request for a Type 2 charter school to the Louisiana Department of Education, to Bessie, for basically make application with them for a Type 2 charter school. Academic crisis. What you received on Tuesday from us was our letter of protest, which we lodged in July, in fact, exactly on July 16th, challenging the Department of Education on the position that the Orleans Parish School Board is an academic crisis. They're using that as the basis for bypassing Orleans Parish School Board and thus deviating from the statute, which says that the applicant must first come to the local school board. Our request this morning is that you would direct the Louisiana Department of Education to rescind and retract their directive to applicants, that they bypass the Orleans Parish School Board, and that there be compliance with the law that an applicant first seek either a Type 1, well, in this instance, since it's all new charter schools, we won't get into Type 3s, but that they would seek a Type 1 first from the Orleans Parish School Board, and once that assessment is made by the Orleans Parish School Board, either favorably, we grant the Type 1, or if not, then and only then will they submit an application to Bessie for a Type 2 charter school. That's our request this morning, and just wanted the record to be clear. And if you have any questions, certainly I will be proud to respond to any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Dasty.
Mr. Morris, I remember directly, very directly, asking the question of you and the other members if your request had anything to do with this year's adoption cycle. And your answer to me was, no, we're talking about next year. And we did, let me finish, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I listened to you.
Yes, ma'am.
We did specifically talk about the fact that these applications have been in. We're about halfway through the process. And I can only speak for myself to say that I am not going to be interested in validating all the hard work that has been done for the people who have, under the department's interpretation and decision about this. And I will also state that there was no consensus that anything has changed with Orleans Parish. You're still considered, upon the legal and the department's advice, to be a district in financial crisis, I think it's called. I don't have the academic crisis. So nothing has changed on your status. The guidance that was given to those applicants under the understanding at that point has not changed. So to go and to tell 9 applicants that their applications are invalidated, to me, invalidates our own process. Had there been a ruling or there had been a change of mindset, then I would understand that. But that did not happen on Tuesday. So I'm frankly a little surprised that you come here with a whole different request than you had on Tuesday.
And if I might respond, on Tuesday again, what I said, and Mr. Pasterik I think will confirm this, because the question was asked whether, with respect to the current applications, whether or not we were looking for any input in that process. And my response, and Mr. Pasterick spoke with me after he left the Diaz, was that we want more than simply notification. Because right now, the directive from the Louisiana Department of Education is that they would notify us when there are Type 2 applications submitted from applicants from Orleans Parish. I said we want more than notification, and we want to be involved to the extent that we were in the prior years. Again,
But now you're asking to throw those applications
and
out
yes,
and
ma'am,
start it?
that's correct, and that's, again, that's my error. I was of the impression that they had the same number of applicants as in prior years. The concern by the board is that with 9 applicants, that there can be adverse consequences with respect to facilities and a number of other issues that would impact us if, in fact, Bessie chooses to approve 9 Type 2 charters. Given the volume, the 9 applicants that are there, and again, I was not aware that there were 9, so I do admit that was my error. I did not say that we didn't want any involvement in the process. What I was looking for...
Say that there would be a sharing of information and some engagement.
Yes, and that's what Mr. Pasterick agreed to, and that's what we talked about afterwards.
That occurs. But to ask to invalidate 9 applicants, and I'm sure you're aware of the work and the effort and the time and expense that goes into...
And I appreciate your position.
And I don't know why that request would be before us today.
And I might add also, because what's of particular concern is that our response, our letter of protest to the declaration that Orleans Parish School Board was deemed to be academically in crisis, we issued that on July 16th. That's the letter that you have. That's the letter that I gave to the committee members on Tuesday. We did not hear back from the Louisiana Department of Education as to whether or not they agree with our position or disagree with our position. So we were in basically legal limbo in that we didn't know whether or not the department had changed its position or in fact had agreed with our protest that we are not in academic crisis.
I know of no time that we have there was any change. And did you inquire with the department or the state superintendent?
In our letter, we asked that it be rescinded. We asked that there be a response to our letter, and we got neither.
If I might add, Mr. Chair, in August, we were here at Bessie, and when the question came up with the Department of Education staff regarding the status of Orleans Parish and whether or not charters would be allowed, Orleans Parish would be allowed to have some comment regarding Type 2. I did make a comment in August and put in a comment card regarding that particular question.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Gibbons.
there was a letter that I received a copy of in which Mr. Meyer, I believe, advised the applicants out of an abundance of caution. How did that wording go, Chris, that they submit their applications to the Orleans Parish School Board? And so I thought when I saw, here it is, thank you, that you write in response to Mrs. Moran's letter regarding bypassing OPSB. I'm looking for, oh, this is the letter to Mr. Meyer.
That's our letter.
That's our letter of July 16th.
I'm looking at the letter that you sent in which you advised the applicants out of an abundance of caution to submit their applications to Orleans Parish.
No,
notify.
Right,
Which one?
we put out 2 official notices, the request for applications, and we both times clarified. And in the second one, after we received, as the department received the letter from OPSB, we clarified even further our explanation legally of why we believed that because the district is in academically in crisis, it is not eligible to review type 2 or type 1 or type 3 applications. And so we put that out a second time to notify them. However, we also reiterated, which has always been the department's point, that we would work with OPSB on any applications we receive to inform them, to get their input, to discuss that with them, both during the application process, after NACSA makes its recommendations. That position has not changed from the department. So we're continuing just like the law has informed us to continue for the last 3 years, and we're doing that process again this year.
Well, this is what I'm not clear on. I understand what Mr. Morris has just presented. And I have to quite frankly say that that would not be my suggestion, because we have to unravel this crisis risk issue and then address the state law that has been written that establishes that. What I'm asking Mr. Meyer, stop talking to Ms. Hunt, because you can't listen to me and her too. You said that there has been a process of involvement. I'll wait. You said that there has been a process of involvement. What is the process of involvement? And are you still following? Because what I'm hearing is that they have not been afforded an opportunity to know who they are, to review those applications, and I believe you have, in the last 2 years, received recommendations on those applications. And in my mind, in the interim, that's the policy we should be following until we can address, and I asked Mr. Superintendent to give me a list of reasons for academic crisis and high risk, because I want to know what they are, I want to know where they are, and I want to know what's necessary to resolve it. Now, I asked for that at the last board meeting. I still don't have that list, but I'm not on that point. The first point is, are you following the process that has been in place for the last few years, where the applications have been sent to them and reviewed, and you receive their opinions on those applications? That's my first question.
Yes, and to the knowledge that I know of, the answer is yes.
Now, okay, that's
what
you.
we do, well, I want to make this very, very
Hold on,
clear.
hold
Well,
on.
it's important for the board, ma'am, that we make this clear, is that NACSA is currently reviewing applications. What we do is, once NACSA makes those decisions and recommendations, those come back to the department, then we make a recommendation to the board. It's my understanding that at that time, applications that receive NACSA's stamp of approval, their third-party independent review stamp of
I know who
approval,
they are.
we then share with OPSB those. So of the 9, if 2 come back successful from NACSA, at that point, we would then share those with them and have conversations out of courtesy. Again,
Then
this
the
is a courtesy
question
with them.
becomes, have you told them that?
Again, this is following the process that's happened the last 3 years.
I didn't ask you about the process. I'm talking about where we are today. Have you shared this information as to why they have not seen these applications yet? I mean, it makes, what you just said makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
According to the process you're following. The question becomes, why are we here if you've told them what you're doing? And I don't think that the two of you have sat down to discuss where you are and why you are, and that's why we're here hearing this. I understand that you are saying that because of high risk or whatever, they cannot do 1s and 3s. But I don't understand why you're not following the process you've established, okay? And I think that's why we're here today. Now, my recommendation to the Orleans Parish School Board is that because that's the process in place, understand that until we can unravel the other issue, we need to stick to this process, whether I agree with it or not, okay? We need to stick to the process. Then we need to get a clear understanding of why they are in high risk financially and why they're in academic crisis. Once we have an understanding of what that actually is, then I want to know what is the progress to get them off. Because if we don't do that, I am going to then say that you are holding them hostage to prevent them from passing type 1 and type 3 charters. I'll tell you where I'm going. So that's why I keep asking, why are they there? what do they need to do, and once you establish that criteria, don't change it again.
Okay.
Now, that's my position.
Mrs. Tyler, I think you wanted to make a statement.
I would just like to respond on behalf of Mr. Pasterek. I'm not really clear about this discussion today because on Tuesday, it was my understanding, and after dialoguing with our state superintendent, that we had it cleared up on the risk status, and we are working.
Report, where is it?
Don't interrupt.
No, I'm serious. If they had a discussion, I've asked for a report.
Don't interrupt. It's
Okay.
Thank you. I'm just an impolite person.
Ms. Givens, let Ms. Tyler finish,
I would be
please.
happy to if I get my report.
Ms. Tyler.
And Ms. Pasterek has not shared with me that there has been any other discussions or changes about what we're doing with OPSB this school year in terms of the applications that have been reviewed and that will be passed to us from NACSA. Now, I know that we have been working with Orleans Parish School Board and the system on the high-risk status, and we will continue to expedite that process. Mr. Pasterek did make a commitment publicly on Tuesday about that process, and we're going to be working to try to help Orleans Parish eliminate that status.
Mrs. Tyler.
Yes.
You think it's possible at the December meeting that you could give the board a report on the process, what has
Yes.
happened and what will happen?
Yes.
To see that this issue about particularly the academic crisis is resolved?
Yes.
But
we
I
will
think
certainly
most
do that.
everyone's in agreement that Orleans Parish School Board is beyond that.
Okay, we will certainly have that report for you.
Thank you.
Our attorney needs to make just one or two comments because she has been involved with our state director, who is unfortunately not able to be here today because she's had a lot of involvement with this process.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I just wanted to point out that under the law, Orleans Parish was put into academic crisis by the board back in 2004. And once you're a district in academic crisis, the law provides 1710.6 that you can't come out of academic crisis until you're no longer defined as academic crisis as far as performance, but also until all audit findings are corrected. And so that has been why Orleans is still
We
in
understood
academic
that from
crisis.
Tuesday's discussion,
Okay.
but
That's correct.
I think we're about to reach that point as well.
And Mr. Chair, members of the board, just so that the record is absolutely clear, because there's some merging of concepts here that are inappropriate. We hear talk about high risk. That has nothing to do with the declaration that we were in academic crisis. Absolutely nothing. The high risk matter is something that took place prior to Katrina, dealing with some federal grant issues. That was resolved, as I understand it. All of that was resolved. We're still working through some issues, some small issues with tying the loose ends there. That is an entirely separate issue, separate and apart from academic crisis and the financial considerations when one is declared to be an academic crisis. Now,
Mr. President,
in 6 pages of explanation, we went through the audit
We got that
findings.
yesterday,
Yes.
Tuesday.
We did.
So
President.
we understand that fully. Mr. Kilbert, I would say that Orleans Parish needs to expedite the efforts to resolve this last issue regarding the financial part of
It's
it.
the last issue. And that's why I've been asking for a list. I want to, first of all, know what audit are you trying to resolve? And if you're trying to resolve the findings that were on the 2004 audit, we need to know that.
And they are resolved.
And
Ms.
they are,
Gibbons.
because those are resolved. So what audit? That's why I keep asking.
That's the reason we need the two of them to sit together and resolve these issues together. Mr. Romer,
I think we made it clear here that there's unanswered questions that need to be answered. We're not going to answer them today. It's going to require the department to be with OPSB, which the superintendent made it clear that he would sit down and work with them. Okay? In the meanwhile, we're not going to stop the charter application process that's already begun. And we've made it clear that we expect the department to share with Orleans Parish when we get the recommendation back from NACSA, they would share that information with Orleans
Right.
Parish School Board, just as we have every other year. I say let's move on.
Mrs. Johnson?
I have a couple of questions, because Mr. Lawyer said that there were certain kinds of recommendations. What are we talking about here that were made in the previous years? What are we talking about?
We were afforded the opportunity to review the type 2 applications that were being considered by Bessie.
When you say in the previous years, are you talking about 2009?
Superintendent Kilbert.
Ms. Johnson, we're talking about 2008, 9, and 2009, 10. Those applications.
That's all I need to know.
Yes.
So until this year, y'all had already done that. Okay. The second thing, because and I have read all of the letters, by the way, but did you receive notification?
I'm sorry, did we receive notification of the 9 applicants?
Yes.
I have not seen 9 notifications. I have seen 4. Yes, ma'am.
And who was that from? Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
If y'all don't mind, I'd like to just put something on the table. I would like for the Department of Education, because this is a crucial issue, to come back in December with a recommendation on, because I'm very unclear on how you could have allowed something to happen in 2008, 2009, and then say it cannot happen in 2010.
That's right.
So I want to understand the recommendation. Now, that's what they just told me, Chris, that they reviewed applications in 2008 and in 2009. Isn't that what you told me, Mr. Kilbert?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and now this year they can't. There's a little something confusing about that particular process, and I do think it needs to be clear. Now, I'm finished with it.
Okay.
Okay, that's,
All
should we
right,
call?
and that is, Mr. President, that was my issue. This is something that has been done before, and now without notice, it's stopping. I'm not concerned about, I am not trying to stop the charter process.
Right.
I understand that those applications have been submitted, and it is in the workings. But what I want to know is that the process as it has been implemented will continue. Now, so to that regard, I'd like to offer a substitute motion for item number 8.
Well, Ms. Givens, I wanted to say this. I think what you've just said has been made abundantly clear to the Orleans Parish School Board and to the department and with Mr. Pastrick, and all have agreed that that's going to be something that they're going to work from, and in December, at the latest, we're going to get a report on what progress has been made. Okay.
So we need to change the motion to read that the board recommends that the Department of Education continue the process that has been in place for the 2008-2009 cycle, which allows the Orleans Parish School Board to review charter applicants. Yes, that is the process. Yes, they do.
Yes.
And they make a recommendation to the department. That's what they said. Now, I am not saying that they are voting on a type 1 or a type 3. They are reviewing the applications, and that's what you just said they did, Chris.
No, just to be clear, again, what we've done in the past, based on my understanding of it, and again, this was passed down from knowledge from the previous director of the charter school office. I was an interim director for about 2 months, and then now Ms. Erin Bindley is the director. What was passed down to us is after NACSA finishes its review process,
That's right.
they tell us of X number of applicants, Y have met our bar. It's then at that time that we share those applications. We're still planning to do that once NACSA tells us. So
I'm not telling you to give it to them before NACSA.
Got it.
That's not what I said.
Just to
I said
continue
that
the
they
process.
continue the process as it has been done for the last 2 years.
Right, and
Now,
that's our
if you
intention.
give it to them before,
And I-
after, or whenever, I don't care. Just do what you've been doing.
And
That's
I
all
think-
I'm saying.
And the department is saying that's their intent.
All right, so, but the motion needs to read that, Mr. President, so I'm trying to craft a motion that captures the essence of what they're sitting at the table saying. And I have to say it so that Nina can write it down correctly. That's why I'm trying to get the verbiage right. And if you want to help her with the motion, that's fine too. But understand, I'm not trying to suggest you change the process. I'm just saying follow what you've been doing. Nina, so now I don't know where you are.
All right, I think the motion says that the State Department of Education will continue the process
That's right.
regarding charter schools and Orleans Parish's review of charter schools as has been done in the past.
That's exactly, thank you so much. That's so short and sweet. Now,
If I can say something, I do have a problem with the word review, if we could use a different problem, because the law says that a district that's been declared to be an academic crisis shall not consider, review, or act upon charter applications. So, consider, review, or act upon.
All
So
right, then what have you been doing for the last 2 years?
I think we've been giving them notification.
And they've been giving you
We've been
an opinion?
sharing.
All right, so the department will provide notification
Or
to
share?
the Orleans Parish School Board
Yeah.
to share.
Is it provide notification, because don't you get an opinion back?
We discuss as collaborative entities.
How about collaborate?
Collaborate, okay. Any objections to that motion?
Mr. Chairman?
All right,
Mr. Chairman?
wait just one sec. Mr.